At this depth, the wreck reads as architecture first and history second. A good entry is not the biggest opening. It is the one that can still be read on return. The way out is established before the way in.
Large wrecks give predators the same advantage they give divers: cover and surprise.
Crossing a threshold changes the wreck from mass into confinement. Inside, every meter must be read as walls, ceiling, floor, and consequence. The first real landmark is vertical, a void that can be remembered on the way back.
Postal spaces preserve intent longer than paper.
The room is small, but the debris has turned it into layered terrain. Trace evidence appears where movement met hardware.
A threshold can record the last direction more clearly than a corridor.
The room itself explains the posture: wedged, sheltered, and never cleared.
Record, then back out. Nothing moved, nothing taken. Sometimes the value is not the object, but the fact that it stayed closed. The route holds because the landmarks remain consistent.
Administrative spaces often keep the clearest route evidence.
A tag survives because metal lasts. Meaning survives because place does.
When the room is already unstable, stillness is better than reflex.
Again, fabric appears where motion ended against structure. The shelf edge marks the last protected recess in the room. The collapse, not the corridor, explains this final position.
No contact, no rearrangement, no second disturbance.
Good routes depend on repeating truths, not new guesses.
Machine spaces keep their own geography, even after they stop working.
A navigational object in a tool room suggests lives crossing functions. The hinge line again becomes the first clue. Small routine objects can narrow a life into one corner of one room, pinned by the room itself, not hidden from it. Respect is procedural here: line, distance, and still water. Open only what the wreck already allows. Ceramic outlasts wood, but not pressure, impaste, or time. The room is already delicate. Surprise does not grant permission for bad movement. The stall frame preserves what open floor would not. Two small objects are enough to make the hidden corner legible. The partition became both screen and trap. No room is improved by our presence. First hazard tier, a minor silt bloom caused by a single careless touch. Reaction matters more than surprise. Stop, hold the line,
let the room return.
The room is back when the line and the walls agree again.
Food spaces often become obstacle courses long after they stop being kitchens. Objects tied to dining survive because weight pin them where hands cannot. Openings keep the clearest sequence. Cloth first, body later. The geometry of the opening explains everything.
Documented. Withdrawn. Unchanged.
A named forward anchor makes the next section measurable.
Large rooms restore the wreck's scale without ever becoming open water.
A closed object can still be read without being emptied.
At a shaft edge, stillness matters even more than surprise.
The next phase begins where observation turned into command, and where command now survives only as structure. Command space survives here as structure, alignment, and damage patterns. Even command spaces have become habitat. The first evidence is anchored to the station itself. A signal object can outlast the signal system that once depended on it. Pinned at the station, preserved by the same collapse that ended movement.
Withdrawal is part of the documentation, not separate from it.
Navigation rooms shrink quickly when furniture and silt take over the floor. A ring in a working room suggests private life carried into public duty. A tight room punishes overreaction faster than surprise. From command to communication, the route stays believable because the landmarks repeat.
Communication rooms become silence, but their layout still remains readable.
Writing survives here only as tools, not as text. The room gives the sequence again, fabric first, body second. A clasp without pages still marks routine interrupted.
Sheltered by the workstation, trapped by the same collapse.
Documentation ends where disturbance would begin.
Second hazard tier begins where a normal doorway becomes a deformed machine of entrapment.
Cause is simple. Damaged ring plus rigid suit profile. Reaction is mechanical, not dramatic. Back out, rotate, rethread the suit, keep the line clear. Second near catch resolved by reducing profile, not by pushing harder. Hazard contained, route restored. Small rooms require a reason to enter. The hinge line becomes the first clue in another room. The floor is the real danger, not the animal. A doorway narrows both movement and evidence into a single line. Sheltered by furniture, trapped by the same furniture. Respect is visible in the water that stays still behind you. Administrative rooms preserve both order and its failure. Value here is informational before it is monetary. The sea keeps count in corrosion, not in currency. Small rooms can preserve detail, but only if the path in remains honest. Portraits survive as objects, even when identity no longer does. Again, the room offers evidence before the body. The floor is the hazard, the animal is only the distraction. A single small jewel can define a whole corner of a room. The smallest shelter became the last shelter. Leave the room with less disturbance than you brought into it. The route now leaves paperwork and returns to structure. Vertical openings are both maps and traps. Forward loop marker set. If visibility worsens later, this name becomes direction. Wider rooms can still be more dangerous if they connect to the sea in the wrong place. Common rooms preserve small signals of leisure amid structural ruin. Current pulse at the tier is mild for now, but it is changing the room. Even here, stillness protects both diver and sight. A wider room can still close down fast when current begins carrying the water itself. Third hazard tier is beginning, current-driven marine snow entering the route itself. Cause identified, current pulse through the hull tear, carrying suspended sediment across the route. Reaction, no advance, no search pattern, just line contact and patience. Only the line and the nearest landmark mattered for those seconds. Orientation recovered. The route holds because the line held. Visibility returns in layers. Line first, structure second, confidence last. Sleeping spaces often preserve the smallest shelters and the clearest entrapments. The first clue sits exactly where the body could no longer move. The room is already tight enough. Surprise earns no extra movement. Two small personal traces are enough to explain why this alcove mattered. The berth became both refuge and geometry of entrapment. Record, withdraw, and leave the water as still as possible.
This wreck carries more than rooms. It carries the machinery of a wider war.
The trap in this room is not the fish. It is the net and the braces around it. The farther forward the route goes, the more the sea begins to speak through the steel.
Forwardmost compartments often preserve the clearest warnings.
The third hazard tier does not arrive all at once. It builds. Cause confirmed. Current through the seam, carrying the room away in white. Reaction is simple and strict. No advance, no searching, just line contact and patience.
Recovery does not grant permission to ignore the warning that caused it.
The environment is already dynamic enough. The diver adds nothing to it. Forward limit reached. The route now matters more than any new room. On the way out, even complex rooms become markers rather than destinations. The return still has shape, which means the return is still possible. Turning through a known hazard is different from discovering it.
On exit, every room becomes a corridor.
Pause, confirm, move. The rule does not change on the way out. The route is now pure exit logic.
Fourth hazard tier begins with the structure itself.
Cause confirmed. Active overhead movement and shedding debris.
Exit marker set. Decision made. No more searching, no more delay.
Once the structure speaks that clearly, the correct answer is departure.
The route now asks for nothing except discipline.
Even in retreat, the safest motion is the smallest one. Named landmarks keep retreat from becoming improvisation. The same landmark that led inward now confirms the way out. Known landmarks are proof that the wreck is still readable. One more major landmark confirmed. Exit is now sequence, not guesswork. Some rooms have already given all that can be taken from them without taking anything from them. The wreck is still full of motion, even where history is still. The entry corridor now reads as the last confined space, not the first. The first marker remains exactly where it was left. That is the final proof of a controlled route. Container space gives way to seafloor, but the wreck still defines the world around it. Outside the hull, the ship is still immense, but it is no longer a trap of ceilings and thresholds. A clean exit is part of preserving the site, not merely leaving it. What this dive has confirmed is the route itself. Command spaces, service spaces, living spaces, and human traces preserved where structure trapped them. Richards. What remains unknown is what lies beyond the unstable forward limit we did not cross. We leave now.
Distance restores proportion, and proportion restores respect.
Outside, the wreck returns from rooms and corridors to mass.
Even outside, the wreck remains shared ground between history and living water.
The ship grows larger as the diver grows smaller, which is the correct final proportion. The route is complete, and the site has been left to remain exactly what it was.
The dive ends where scale, evidence, and silence outweigh the diver.